Welcome everyone to season 2 of the Country Files. Today's focus is the Irish buyer, and with me today I have Mary Dunne from MP Dunne, Hamptons International.
Good morning, nice to be here.
Nice to meet you. And Sean Canon from Panorama.
Good morning, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. And Peter Franke from Franke de la Fuente.
Yes, that's correct.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Nice to be here.
Yeah.
Nice to invite both of you. Now we're moving on with the Country Files to season 2, as you said, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We have done the Netherlands, Belgium, and it's great to have both of you here because you have such a long experience of working in this area, but also, of course, you're both Irish.
Yeah,
Correct.
So that's an important fact for this episode. So we're going to talk about, as we usually do, so this whole idea of this program is to highlight the different buyer behaviors from different countries and to see what could be different between different countries, but also the difference between the process in Spain and in this case then Ireland. But before we go into those facts, Mary, if you could please introduce a little bit about yourself and the company as well to start with.
okay, well, I'm the owner and founder of MP Dunne. It's also Hamptons International because we're liaised with the UK brand, Hamptons International there. I've been here 30 years. The last 15 years have been based in Marbella. I've got my business in the front of the Marbella Club, and I've been doing real estate since 1995. So that's quite a long history.
Yeah, welcome. Nice to hear. And Sean?
Sales director with Panorama Properties, the longest established company here in Marbella. I've been working with Panorama for 18 years and 6 years more or less now as their sales director.
Right. And now because we're focusing on Ireland and where you're from, so where are you actually from in Ireland? Just to give us a bit of a background here, Mary.
So I'm from Southern Ireland, Kildare, County Kildare, which is close to Dublin. It's a rural area, but we call it born in the sticks, but anyway, but it's close to Dublin. So really, my background is, close to Dublin always.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not too far away from Mary actually, so I'm from Dublin, just on the border of the counties of Wicklow and Dublin, a little village called Shankill. But moved out here, met a beautiful Spanish lady, and hence the reason for living here in Spain.
And we are doing quite all right?
Yep.
It's a nice place to live in.
Yep.
It's not bad.
It's not a bad place.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into Ireland then and talk about the differences. But so maybe we should start with a little bit of your own experience. So working with this particular nationality in this market, maybe starting with you, Mary. So have you been focused on this, on particular Irish buyers, or is it?
Oh no, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, my career, absolutely. We had our own office in Dublin at one point. Because we were running a lot of developments here, we had our own developments and we travelled a lot. So at one point, it's about 20 years ago now, we had an office in Donnybrook. So that was part of our group. I took a franchise there, Property Partners. So I was actually on their board of directors. So we had a huge amount of Irish coming. At that point was really when the real number of Irish were buying here. Really big time. And it was the time of the Celtic Tiger, which is a very famous thing, which then, unfortunately, he became extinct.
Yeah.
And that changed everything. But we have a tradition. We've been dealing with Irish buyers for 20 years, easily. And many, many of them. So we have buyers and sellers. And I still have... My very first client was a plumber from Swords.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Christy. And Christy said, "How are you, Mary? Are you all right?" And he called me still, and he still called me, and we still talk, yeah. And he would do nothing without me. There's no way he would. He has a property still in La Cala de Mijas. So now and again he decides he's going to sell it, and he gives me a call. "Sure, how much is it worth?" And then we have a chat.
Okay,
but he still hasn't sold it. But at some point he will.
Your first client?
He was actually my very first client, yeah. Yeah.
How about you, Sean?
I probably started back in early 2008, and at that stage, I think the Celtic Tiger was just starting to die a bit of a death, really.
Yeah.
So my kind of first experience with Irish people was actually more of a selling client than a buying client, because unfortunately, that stage is with the banks and the situation and the financing and the ease to the liquidity. A lot of people had overextended themselves, and the first thing to go was that luxury asset that they had overseas.
Absolutely.
So my situation, the company at that stage, was to assist those people to try and move their property on as quick as we possibly could for them.
I think it's interesting. So in overall, I was talking to Alfredo Bloy Dawson, you know, the guy that we know in our marketing consultant here on the coast, just before the podcast, and we were discussing where, you know, where do they buy? You know, where are the Irish buyers on the coast? Do we have any specific areas? So and I don't know. I'm not maybe that updated with the data. Maybe you are, of course, better than me on that point. But the eye test tells me something different, because I have just the feeling that I meet a lot of Irish people, and that you know, we have a lot of Irish people in these areas. Am I right? So what's your take on? Are there any specific areas that they prefer, or any buying behavior there?
Do you want to take the lead on that, Mary?
I would have said they'll go from Benalmadena, as they call it, right over to Estepona, right to Casares. A lot of it's going to be the budget and golf. They're avid golfers, and you have an awful lot in Mijas Costa.
Yeah.
La Cala de Mijas is all those developments are full of Irish. And then Marbella itself, we have a lot of Irish here, but we're still a lot less than the Brits. There's an awful lot more British, but as a percentage, but they're spread out all over. I wouldn't say there's anywhere absolutely, you know, full of Irish. They mix very well. Irish people mix really well, so they go all over.
They're not like the Swedes in Nueva Andalucía. They want to find
They want to,
No, there's no invasion of Irish in Nueva Andalucía. There's, you know, at the moment there's a lot of Swedes. It seems like. So we tend. And a lot of people wouldn't be, for example, they wouldn't be putting their kids in school, and that they won't be people with young kids. They'll be here for a holiday, or they'll be an older couple and they're coming backwards and forwards, but they're not, at least from my experience, most of them, it's a holiday home.
Yeah.
It's not that many that would be full time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's something that we always discuss on this podcast, and it's the trends, right? Well, I think you maybe be talking about this many times as well. So, but if we focus on the Irish, then you said that they're mainly buying vacational homes. Still,
in my experience.
in your experience, right?
Yeah.
And how about you, Sean? Do we see this relocation trend
We're,
with Irish as well?
I'm the same as Mary. The same kind of tendencies are happening there. They're coming over here, as Mary said. They tend to be older couples that are doing it. Very different from the profile of, let's say, the Swedish or Scandinavian buyers.
Very different.
And that's got to do with the business base that they're working in. We've seen a lot of people in the tech industry from Sweden coming and purchasing with us. Not so much with the Irish buyers. So the profile is definitely still the older couple, maybe retiring earlier, and as Mary said, keen avid golfers. So they like that area of Nueva Andalucía, and also Mijas for that as well.
And that's sort of a little bit the lifestyle around the golf.
It's a lifestyle. You know, Aloha Golf, for example, has lots of Irish there coming and going, and people want to get away from the weather, and they'll come here, and they've no issues with no visa issue, no 90 days. They can come and go, which is huge. So it's a second home for them.
I think that's a really important.
It's a huge thing.
Because people, I think, can tend to forget that Ireland, Republic of Ireland, we're still
it's EU.
It's EU.
Yeah.
No visa, and you know.
No issues with bringing your money in. The KYC is easy.
KYC.
Yeah, everything. So it's very easy for them, and it's, you know, the Celtic Tiger died, and we both have had experience of that, and it's taken quite a while.
Yeah, we're starting to see them back again.
I have a tendency, first time in years, we did some very good sales, 2025 to Irish, which I was quite surprised. I went, I've got one of my colleagues is Irish Trevor, And he did very well last year with Irish. And it's,
Maybe we should actually try to explain a little bit the term the Celtic Tiger, what it actually.
you take that, Sean.
But the Celtic Tiger would have been big boom time for Ireland, you know, in terms of the success. Huge companies moving to Ireland at the time.
Yeah.
The banks were, let's say, very generous with the liquidity ratios they would release for equity for people to purchase elsewhere. And there was a massive influx of people which pushed the prices up as well in Ireland and made the homes that they'd had for many years suddenly from a very normal price level increase rapidly in a very short
They could
period of
mortgage
time.
on that house to buy something.
Exactly. So they'd release the equity from there and then go somewhere in the sun and use that equity to purchase them the dream home in the sun at the end of the day.
There's similarities with other markets. One of them is Swedish, of course, because you've seen the price increases on Swedish properties as well. You can always mortgage your house. Sweden also quite flexible with credits and to buy a property abroad. And that is, to point out maybe one main difference here is the mortgage market in Spain. Buyers should always remember that when you're buying a property, you need to have that mortgage in place at the time of the title deed. You can't do that. You can do it if it's a construction credit maybe, but for a normal mortgage, you have to have it in place and you can't remortgage your house in Spain. Just a small detail. Okay, that's interesting. So
But I
Mary?
have a point to make. And someone says to me once, and I think this is quite funny, they said, so what's the difference between, let's say, a Swedish buyer and an Irish buyer in this Tiger times? And I'll never forget it. I said, the Swedish will come along and he'll buy that unit, whatever. And that's it. He's buying one unit and he knows how he's going to pay for it. The Irish fella is going to come in and I'll have that, and that. And he has no idea how he's going to pay for any of it. But that's what they were doing. They were betting and they were buying off plan, which is what we were selling them. And then they were hoping to offload them before completion, which was quite a normal thing that happened. Now it's not.
No.
All the developers nowadays will stop that. They won't let you. You have to sign the title deeds. But that time it was very easy to do that.
Yeah.
So they had an uptake.
Speculation.
It was very much, the Celtic Tiger was very much a speculative type of buyer who bought everything he could get his hands on. You know, not just here, Spain, Portugal, they went to Poland, they went to Croatia, they went all over the place until then the whole thing more or less collapsed.
And then, of course, they were looking for
and then Sean is doing
factors important for the investors or rental yield, etc. Right?
Yeah. Believe me, there was a lot of panic attacks for people when it was coming close to the completions. Yeah. And they would need to get out.
That's the difference, I think, between the Irish buyer that's come back now. They're a lot more conservative.
Completely,
So much more, let's say, a Northern European mentality now. They want to make sure that everything is perfectly in order from a legal point of view. And then make sure then that there was a time where you get an Irish client, they didn't want to hear anything about an inspection on a property, just wanted to sign, put down the deposit, secure it, and off they go and hope for the best. But now everything is, I think the crash of the Celtic Tiger has taught them a lesson. And made sure now that everything they do is 100% by the book.
Okay, that's interesting. So let's start to look at, maybe not go to the smallest detail of the process in Ireland, but we always highlight here more or less the general process in Ireland and to compare it with the Spanish, right? So buying a property in Ireland, Mary, I think you have some you have an example, right?
I do, because I've just gone through it and I've experienced it, and I was quite blown away by it, at how different it is and how much more regulated. And, you know, you basically, in Ireland, a real estate agent is called an auctioneer. You get an auctioneer's license, you must go to college, to university. Minimum is 3 years, I think, Sean. It's about 3 years. And you specifically do a degree for real estate. There's no question of you just like selling a few properties for 5 years, you know, and then you're suddenly not a chance. You have a license. You have to have all kinds of things before you get the license, and the license is given to that person. So the people within their offices are not allowed to negotiate. They just go out and show the properties. So and you also have exclusivity. In other words, you would just pick your agent. You wouldn't dream of listing your property with 20 agents or anything like it. There's no real MLS as such. You go into your local auctioneer, you sign up whatever it is, and of course the commission is quite different. The commission is at 1 to 1.5 to 2. Max 2 would be very unusual. 1.5. But you pay all the expenses. You pay for all advertising. You pay as the seller pays. You agree with them a budget. Their commission is just for them. That's what it is. And then you also pay for signage, for professional photographs, advertising. So, and that's it, more or less. And then the process is very different. When you go as a buyer, they open the houses up. They just open them up, and you go. It's very much things people do on Sundays, Saturdays and Sundays. They go to
open house.
open houses.
Yeah.
They go looking around houses.
House shopping.
But in order to be able to make a bid for a house, you have to have mortgage approval. See, everybody in Ireland is buying with a mortgage. It's very rare that they would be buying without a mortgage. It's quite, unless it's a business, but your average person buys with a mortgage. You can't make a bid without you have proof of qualification of funds. And then, just to shorten it up then, to finish it, the deposits, it's all subject to mortgage. You can even have a deposit down and they can still pull out. They can pull out. There's none of the 10% or that it's, you lose your money. Yeah. You can absolutely, literally, until the day before. It's quite a process. We had one just said, no, changed our mind. We were 3 months down the road. By the time they got the surveys, every property has to have a survey.
But did you then
refund?
Did you take the property off market?
We had the property off market. Yeah.
But was there any money down?
We didn't. Yeah, they had a down payment. They had a 10%, or sorry, excuse me, they had a 10,000 reservation fee.
Yes.
I'm talking about mid price range level here, and then they were to get to private contract, and they pulled out, and it was 2.5 months. We couldn't. There was a lot of toing and froing goes on between the solicitors. You see, they don't pick up the phone to each other. They write letters.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's letters and emails going backwards and forwards. Yeah. So if I send you a letter, Peter, maybe next week we might get it back again. So it'll be backwards and forwards.
That would never happen with me.
Well, I'm just saying in Ireland.
Okay.
The solicitors in Ireland are a law unto themselves, and they go at their speed. Yeah. And they don't take any umbrage. There's no way that you're going to be able to chase them after them and everything. It goes the way they want to go.
But step by step then. So the process is, first of all, this is important, I think, to point out. You go to an open house, let's say, you negotiate terms, price mainly, etc., and then if you have an agreed sale, so to speak, a handshake, then the process begins.
Yes.
And the process is assisted by solicitors, both on the seller side and the buyer side. Am I right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Due diligence. So it's similarities there, right?
Oh, completely.
Due diligence process, title, contracts.
You must have everything is always subject to a survey, and you could be told this tank isn't right, that's not right, and you have to fix it and sort out things. You could get a list a mile long of things. Yeah.
Technical inspection.
Even
on
even on an older house,
everything.
Everything. The bank won't give mortgages unless you have the survey.
I see.
Yeah, technical survey, not just not evaluation. Yeah, and
that's interesting because now we have been discussing a lot of countries in these episodes. France, for example, super strict on inspections, mandatory, not only on the technical status of the property, but also electricity and water. Absolutely everything is checked and verified. Yeah. Sounds similar to in Ireland.
We're not quite at that level, but
it's a mandatory part.
It's a mandatory part of it, and then they may bring up things in a survey, but you say, well, it's a 40-year-old house, I'm not fixing that, and they say okay, and they'll accept it. But for us, one of them was there was some asbestos in the roof in the garage that had to be removed.
And time frame? We're talking about from handshake to
2 to 3 months.
2 to 3 months.
But effectively. Similar to here, but what I felt was, the disappointment with the first one when they pulled out, and then the next one was ready to go, and they got in a bidding war, which is very, very different from here, which is definitely an eye-opener, because what happens is you go back, once you must visit the house and you must have proof of funds, then you go on a platform, they give you a key into a platform, so it's like a subasta, so you put in an offer, and the other people can see. They can't see who's doing it, but they can see an offer of €500,000. Okay, well, the next thing, someone 510, and then they start. And most properties they are sold for more than what the list price is. Yeah. Whereas we have the other way around. The price is higher, and you work the backwards. But in Ireland, at the moment, in the current, because they're very short of properties, certainly in the areas we're from. Yeah. So basically it gets into a gazumping situation, and may the best man win. And then you as the owner, you get to decide who can complete the quickest. They have to be able to put down their status. We can complete immediately. We're waiting for something to sell, etc. It's so transparent. And you as the owner, you just get an email, you've got a new offer. And I love it. I thought it was brilliant. And I'm looking at how to do it here, but I don't think it'll work.
Not quite the same here. Yeah.
Not quite the same
What do you
here.
think about that? Because that's interesting from a general point of view as well. Because in Sweden we have very transparent offer processes,
Absolutely.
and I think also in other countries as well.
Yes.
So in your experience in general now maybe, but also with the Irish, when people come here they sometimes, and they have in their home country almost a bidding process where prices go up.
Correct. Yeah, they're quite surprised with the process here, because at the end of the day, they said, first of all, how do you access? How can we get comparables on this? So up until very recently, until the land registry have started to release these figures to the general public, you were very much led by your real estate agent. And at the end of the day, as Mary touched on earlier, the same level of professionality is very hard to find in this market here compared to the UK and Ireland back home as well. So it's very important that you align yourself with a real estate agent that's clear and ethical and transparent and can talk to you about real market values. So, and be guided by those real values rather than the prices that you can see on the marketplace. And as Mary also touched on about the exclusivity of selling, here in Spain it's very different. You can have various different agencies offering on a non-exclusive basis. And sometimes it can be a surprise for the clients when they're looking on the various portals, the variance in the prices that are there for the exact same property.
Yeah.
We had a situation not so long ago where there was a difference of 900,000 for the same villa being advertised.
Yeah.
So it's very important for the Irish buyers coming here that they align themselves, one, with a very reputable lawyer to guide them through the legal process, and two, also a very reputable real estate agent that, you know, has obviously the competence and also the trust and the ethics to guide that person in the right direction as well.
Yeah, and I mean, and this is, I think we will share this experience that the frustration can come from both maybe a buyer and a seller, mostly the buyer, because you don't have the transparency. As you said, you have an offer. As a seller, you have the offer. It's there in an email. In Sweden, it's even more transparent, maybe a little bit over the top almost, because if you enter a bidding process as a buyer, you automatically get text messages on your phone if there's a second bid, higher bid coming in, and after when the bidding process is finalized, you as one of the bidders have the right to access the information of not only the bids but the identity of those people that made the bids.
No, we don't have that. We have everything else except the idea of that's kept private.
But here, of course, we know in Spain, nothing like that exists, right? Transparency. There are other offers. There might be other people interested, etc.
I would say I would agree with Sean. That's one of the biggest shocks that they have as well, is that the comparables that, you know, at home in Ireland, you more or less within reason know what any property is going to be worth. It's on that street. It's this. It's much more, and you can see that property was sold for X. Here, even with the new notary, it's still generalised, Sean. It isn't published what a property was sold for. You go to the States, you put in an address, and you can see when that property was sold, how much it was sold for, and who bought it. Could be a company, but you can see exactly. So you're able to judge, and that, I think, has to come. But we're talking about Irish. So for them, it's a bit of a muddy water, a lot of the things, and they're quite surprised with that, but they just go, oh, well, it's Spain. But they do need to align themselves, I think, and I think that's where they run a risk.
Yeah.
Or any buyer runs a risk, because you don't really know, is this person telling you? They're just telling you, oh, well, that was, 10 million it was sold for. Well, actually, it was probably sold for 6, because there's no way to,
You can't verify it.
You can't verify.
No, that's of course a common
that's a different
issue. To end, sort of finalize the process in Ireland, then, so you have a due diligence part, you have then of course a private purchase agreement contract.
Yeah.
You have and finally you register as a new owner in the land registry in Ireland.
Your solicitor does everything for you. You do nothing. No
notaries?
No notary. No notary. And the two solicitors exchange contracts between the two of them, and they set completion date, and next thing suddenly funds are transferred from one to the other, or the bank straight to the solicitor's client account.
Solicitors are even more, let's say, active role in the process compared to Spain, because here still my experience is that, of course, we do the due diligence, we have our responsibility, but it's always, communication with the agent. And if let's say the commercial terms are to be renegotiated for any reason during that process, usually the agents are the one that engages then with the other agent to have the conversation. So it seems to me like in Ireland, the solicitors plays an even more active role.
Yeah, but also it in the end it happens very, very quickly. Once you get to the private contract, you're more or less there. It'd be quite unusual that it's going to go unless something happened with their mortgage. But there are always the consumer rules are tight in the favour of the consumer. So it's always going to be, if something happened, that they'll still be able to get out of it, but pretty much. And then the completion is just done by the two solicitors. They just literally swap the money, which I think is the same in Belgium and Sweden. There's no notary. You don't have to go anywhere. The solicitor just says, we completed today, and that was it. And then you pay whatever tax you've got to pay, which is lots of it, and the funds are sent to you.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, for Irish people, the idea of a notary is something very strange, because we have like a private representative, which is your lawyer that you're appointed. He has the fiduciary rights and to guide there for his clients. So they have to learn more or less, become accustomed with the process here. At the end of the day, it can only be legalised publicly with the use of a notary. And the whole process is a little bit strange for them. And sometimes you think, well, if this guy is overseeing the process, do I really need a lawyer? But we always say to our clients, do you need a lawyer? Absolutely. You're dealing in a country, it's not your first language. Second of all, there's so many minefields in terms of the legalities where it's a lot more controlled by Coleman Ireland. But here, Marbella has had its issues in the past, well documented, in terms of planning irregularities. So it's very important that you bring your lawyer in at that stage and make sure they can check. We try our best when we have a property for sale to carry out a pre-legal due diligence to try and highlight any issues that we have up front with the property. And we ask our vendors to address those problems up front, because at the end of the day, if you spend your money, and as Mary rightly said, if we take the appointment of a sale and we're investing money for the advertising and everything, you want to make sure that your product is right at the end of the day so you can actually complete the deal if the client is seriously interested in it. So we always advise our clients, if they come on board, delighted to have them with the client, we'll guide them, we'll give them all of the market knowledge that they need. We can guide them in price, the commercial elements of the deal. But at the end of the day, we would also want them to be aligned with a lawyer that can look into all of the legalities and the planning situation there as well. And also, we like to see our clients carry out a survey of the property as well. We, as we're chatting here, the sun is shining, but we've had 6 weeks where it's been torrential rain. And some of the houses, unfortunately, the older ones in particular, have their issues with let's say waterproofing. And these are things that as you come into the good weather with a bit of paint, you can cover it, but you need to go and inspect those properties deeper and make sure that when the weather is unusual, and it's not all the time here, but when that happens, that the house is properly inspected and they're guaranteed in what they're buying.
I have to ask you now, both of you, this question, because, and we are sidetracking off topic, but that's fine, because it's interesting. So you mentioned in the beginning now that the Irish buyers are changing from the Celtic Tiger, buy everything that moves, for investments and on credit and mortgages, speculation, etc. Now a little bit more careful, but isn't that the trend in general? So the trend is, of course, that we have higher budgets here in general. So people are buying for a lot of money. They're also buying to, maybe not the Irish, but many are also buying to relocate. They're moving over here. We see certain initiatives to professionalize the market. And we also always talk about these other countries and buyers coming from other countries where they have actually made the systems even more efficient and more strict, more regulations in other countries. So they have more expectations of having a secure real estate market here as well. So I think it's quite clear where we're moving, right, towards the trend. And you talk about documentation for properties before sale, etc. To me personally, I'm completely in line with what you say. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever to not have the picture fully clear about the product that you sell.
If I can say so, I would absolutely be au fait with Sean. I think both of us were from the same background. I worked with Panorama previous to Sean, and one of the big things, we're a listing agency, so is Panorama, very much so. we literally do a pre-due diligence. I won't take on an exclusive unless I have a fair idea of all the paperwork, because what's the point? We're going to be spending money on it. Yeah. And I know there are a certain number of agents here that I can just put my hand in the fire, they're going to have everything in order. And we would raise red flags for the sellers before they even get anywhere near and say, you need to sort this out, you need that. We have a list of paperwork we require from them. Yeah. Now, you won't get that from a number of agencies here or people who really wouldn't even know, because, you know, they just don't have that level of knowledge.
And they're chasing the listings, to be fair. Isn't that also the case?
And this is the problem when you have a professional company like Mary's and Panorama. At the end of the day, the difference when you're dealing with somebody who really doesn't have the expertise or the knowledge for all of the legalities, and especially in today's market, is the anti-money laundering.
Yes.
So for the agents now, there's you know, we're sujeto obligado, obligated subject, to make sure that we independently collect all of the anti-money laundering paperwork, not only for the buyer, for also the seller. Agents that come here and they're one-man bands, they certainly don't understand it. They think they can just pass that liability on to the lawyers. But at the end of the day, if the relevant, let's say, a SEPLAC department come, knock on their door, they can't just pass the telephone on to the lawyer. They're the people that are going to have the liability and the fines on top of their head.
But it's not even that. If the property is unsellable, for example, there's no lawyer going to be able to fix that. You know, at the end of the day, you know, as I said, sometimes they wouldn't know an escritura if it hit them in the face. Yeah. You know, I mean, they don't even know what it is. They just automatically think they can sell real estate here and then pass it over to the lawyers. But anyway, we digress from Irish.
We did, but I think it's an important subject, so why not mention it from time to time? So the process then in Ireland, what we should also point out are the taxes. Because that's a quite big difference between Ireland and Spain.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Sean, first of all, if you buy a resale property in Ireland, what taxes are then?
Yeah, so you're looking at a stamp duty of 1% up to 1 million. And then once you're over that bracket, then you're looking at 2%. So it's a substantial difference for a resale property here in Spain. So the transfer tax here, the equivalent of the stamp duty there, is 7%. Yeah. For resale property, and then if it's a new property, you have 10% stamp duty, VAT, and then you have 1.2 then stamp duty, additional cost.
Ireland does have VAT on the new properties. If you buy a new house, you've got the VAT.
But that's included in the price.
It's included in the price.
Really, from a buyer's point of
actually, you're
view,
correct. Sorry, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
But so that's a big difference, and if you considering then the total transaction cost of buying a resale property in Ireland, 1.5 to 2.5 more or less in total, right?
Yeah.
And here usually we say for a resale 9.5, 10.
Yep.
New development, okay, so 14 perhaps, right? So are this one of the shocks or surprises for Irish buyers when they come over to Spain? The transaction?
Absolutely. It's one of the biggest ones, yeah.
Something interesting is the Irish inheritance tax, which is quite aggressive actually. So if I'm not mistaken, you have a 33% inheritance tax, of course, above a threshold of 400,000 euros, and on the profit. Is that correct?
That's for the children as a direct relative, but between spouses, there's none.
Yeah. So of course here in Andalusia and in Spain there is an inheritance tax as well, but it's not at all as aggressive as in Ireland, and also the threshold is 1 million, and then it starts from there. So that's something, of course, that any buyer from Ireland should be interested in knowing, that if they buy the property here, if they own a real estate asset in Spain, it's a quite different situation for them.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the sales cost of it as well. At the end of the day, a lot of people come here for an initial visit. So, and they might have a bigger budget, but they want to test their toes in the marketplace. So they'll buy something cheaper. And if they like it here after a couple of years, then they'll upgrade. And then they're quite surprised then with the relevant costs for them as a seller then as well. It's an expensive process to buy and to sell within the same period of time. And the only, let's say, the benefit of the capital gains tax here as well. And back home in Ireland, you're looking at 33%. And it's more standardized. Here in Marbella and Andalusia, you're looking at 19% if they're a non-resident, and obviously you have the different brackets then depending on the price if you're a fiscal resident here in Spain. So it's quite a different procedure as well in the taxing matters.
Taxes will be potentially a shock then for the Irish buyer.
Purchase taxes, and then the selling costs as well at the other end if they're a seller.
the notary's role is
Yes.
something.
They get over that. That's just they just accept it.
They
You're
quite
in
enjoy it,
Spain.
really, don't
But-
they? They quite enjoy the day
Yeah,
out there.
yeah, yeah,
Not an
yeah.
opportunity to celebrate the purchase after we complete the deal.
Yeah,
We take them out for
it's
lunch.
Traditional, off we go for lunch afterwards.
it's quite-
Even though it's got less and less now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now just the lawyers go to the notary. It's much
I think
different
not
since
even.
COVID.
I think 95% of with our clients at least, we sign on behalf of them with power of
yeah,
attorney.
yeah.
They rarely come to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
notary.
Oh, before it was like an all-day affair.
Yeah.
We all turned up. You know, and you're there for the day. You're gone to the notary, but she'll see you later. Yeah.
You knew it was going to take the whole day as well.
Well, that, and then you obviously end up having a glass with them afterwards. You know, particularly if they're Irish.
Oh.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
song or two maybe as well.
Well, I don't know about that, Sean. You're the song man.
You said something about a song, but let's do it after.
Absolutely.
Do that for another day.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the notary is different, but in general, then, what else is it to mention here about the Irish buyers in terms of, you know, you said something that I think that's something to mention again, the difference in their behavior now compared to then 15 years ago or more, right? So how are they when dealing with an Irish buyer? Because we're talking also to now, actually to your colleagues, other agents. Let's assume that you are talking to an agent now. They have never worked with an Irish client before. This is the first time. With your experience, what can we tell them? How can we help them? What should they know?
I think they'll find they're very friendly people. They're very easy, normally, most people to get on. Some of them can be quite, if they're coming, particularly where they're coming from in Ireland, if they're coming from rural areas, they can be quite, I won't say the word naive, but they can be quite like, oh, sure, that's grand, and, you know, whatever. Yeah. But don't be fooled. They're a tough bunch.
Okay.
They're going to negotiate with you very, very hard. You might
That's
think
one of my questions. Negotiations. Are they tough negotiators?
they like to haggle.
Yeah, they are, and they're quite difficult. I'd say probably the Dutch would be number one.
Oh, yeah.
But the Irish wouldn't be too far behind them, you know.
Yeah.
But it's quite a pleasant process a lot of the time.
Yes.
You'll see them pass an offer tongue in cheek. They give you a wink. They know already that it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But they want you to present it anyway. So it's quite good. And I'd say the difference with the Irish is that, you know, trust is a big part of
For
it.
them, yeah.
The minute you do or say anything that's out of line with them, you know, very nicely, they'll just distance themselves from you. You won't even realize it, but they'll push themselves away.
Yeah.
So it's vitally important that you know, as I said earlier, you're competent, but also everything that you say and you do is 100% true and you follow through on it.
Yeah.
So when we had the episode about the Dutch and the Belgian buyers, this we were talking then about the Belgium in particular, that they from a country where, you know, family businesses, business relationships are very personal, etc. Is that also something you can a similarity with the Irish? So the conclusion then was when working with an advisor, that could be a realtor or the lawyer, when they feel that they have the confidence in you, they follow you.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But maybe other nationalities, they're more about the actual content of the contract, the process itself. When they trust the process, then they're ready to go ahead.
Yeah.
But the Belgium at least seems to be a little bit more personal, have a more personal approach.
Yeah, I'd say that's a very fair comment.
Yeah.
You know?
I would say so.
Yeah, they're you know, once they feel that you've won their confidence, they might give you an initial hard time just to feel you out to see if you are what you say you are. But once that trust and let's say bond is established, they're incredibly loyal people to work with as well.
Yeah.
Very good. And they also, there's one thing with Irish is they won't be taking down any flash salesman, all that kind of thing, trying to close them and all the rest of it. That won't wash with an Irish person.
Okay, yeah.
Any trying to, you know, be you know, close them down and this and that and the other, and, you know, all your whole thing about it, that doesn't wash. You're much better off to go in a very, very softly approach with them. Yeah, you don't. That's certainly what I would say.
Yeah.
Very easy, relaxed, but they know they can rely on you and they know what you're telling them, and do not lie to them.
And they like to be low key, Mary, a lot of them.
Very low key.
They're not, you know, you can see them Marbella sometimes, depending where you want to go. People want to live that flash lifestyle.
Yeah.
The Irish people are very low key.
Yes.
Whatever wealth they have, they want to keep it, you know, all you know, well hidden away, and not draw attention to themselves. So they're quite a pleasure to deal with in that respect. You know?
Like, don't ever judge a book by its cover. You might have an Irish guy. I had one guy once, and honestly, you wouldn't give tuppence for him. But that fella could buy and sell you. He could have 100 million in his back pocket, and you would not give him tuppence. You just wouldn't even know. There's no way, no flashcards, so they wouldn't trust. You turn up now in some Ferrari or something like this, or you're all, you know, dolled up in some miniskirt or whatever, that's not going to wash with them. This won't wash with the wife anyway, so that's for sure.
That's for sure.
So low-key people.
Yeah. Sounds nice. Sounds
Trusting
like,
people generally. They can also be wildly hard to deal with. Yeah, some of them are fairly hard to deal with, you know, and they can disappoint you.
In what way?
Insofar as them, you know, you think you're going to do a deal with them, and they could be doing behind, you know, they could be doing other deals and not really being totally transparent with you. It's not all about them sometimes, or it's all about us. It's sometimes about them, that they're not being totally transparent with you as to what they're really up to. They're not really telling you. They'll keep their cards close to their chest.
Okay.
Yeah. Depending on, you know, and a lot of the clients we have Irish that I meet, they'll have been business people that have done well. They'll have worked very hard. Most people are very few. There'll be no .coms or no techies or anything like that. There's an odd few. Stripe, for example, I'd love to meet those guys. The guys that own Stripe, for example, are multimillionaires, but they're still local lads from Mullingar somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
You'll still meet you.
But they should be quite. So that this is when we have Irish clients also. But any client that come from a country where they have a very clear system with advisors, lawyers. I mean, America especially. You know, my lawyer, my tax advisor, my broker. Yeah. They trust their advisor, or they are very used to work with advisors at least. I think that is also what I see here. That, you know, it's a pretty relaxed procedure. When you have the terms agreed on how we should work together with you as a lawyer and a client, they are very. I think that they feel relaxed, knowing that they can proceed. You know, because they come from a system, and especially in Ireland, when the solicitors have such a big role, that's quite clear. All right, so a few not reminders, but repetition here is maybe about the system itself is slightly different, of course, than in Ireland, but there's a due diligence process. The taxes are very different.
Yeah.
That's quite important. The behavior of the Irish buyers has changed over the years since the time of the Celtic Tiger and etc. But they are a pleasant bunch to deal with, but they keep their cards to themselves.
Correct.
Is that a good summary?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I did well then.
Yeah, very bad.
Yeah.
Thank you both for
Thank you.
coming.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
It was a pleasure talking about the Irish, and that's a wrap.